Keep yourself in the loop of everything football. Listen to Alex and Jeremiah on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello there, I'm Jeremiah.
I am Alex, always, and Trevor here.
Dedicated to college and NFL football. The latest football news on and off the field. NFL draft trade rumors. We've got you covered from the NFL, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything else in between. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football, from the latest science dishes, breakout stars, and all the news in between. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
I am Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
And we have a historic day, gentlemen.
Yes.
This is episode number 100.
Yes, we have finally hit the century mark.
We are in the triple digits.
I think we're the only show on the network to do that.
Yeah, as of right now, we are the only one. That's pretty awesome. And Jeremiah, you've been here for... Have you been here for literally every single one?
I think I'm the only one to be on every. I think I'm the only one to be on every episode. So
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Congrats, man. But yeah, definitely a historic day today at the GSMC Football Podcast, episode number 100. Definitely a great time to be alive. So
what a time to be alive.
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. So we're going to start off the show talking Thursday Night Football from last night in the NFL. We had the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears in the NFC North battle, the longest rivalry in all of NFL. Last night was the 192nd meeting between the two teams. The Packers come out on top 26-10 in this game behind a huge second-half performance from Aaron Rodgers and his receivers. He had 3 touchdowns all in the second half. The Bears' offense, Brian Hoyer, is forced to leave the game in the second quarter with a left arm injury, which is now being reported a broken arm. So they had to bring in Matt Barkley, who did Matt Barkley things, throws 2 interceptions and only 81 yards in more than a half of football. So any takeaways from the game last night, gentlemen?
Well, all I can say is Matt Barkley is bad. And Bears fans better hope that Jay Cutler starts, because Matt Barkley was just terrible. He completed his first pass in like 3 years last night. I think since like 2013, since 2013 when he was with the Eagles. But I do want to say something about Ty Montgomery. Yesterday, I did say he was going to be a little bit of an X factor for the Green Bay Packers, and he kind of was, so to speak. He had 126 total yards. I even started him on my fantasy team, so there you go.
As did I, my friend.
Yeah, and he had 60 rushing yards on 9 carries, as well as, I think, 66 yards on 10 receptions. And this offense for the Green Bay Packers, well, I talked about it yesterday that they need to get back on track. This is the perfect game. Devontae Adams, I think he was the first receiver for the Green Bay Packers to have 10 receptions, over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in Lambeau Field. And then Aaron Rodgers had 39 completions, which was more than Brett Favre ever had, I think, at Lambeau Field. And it was like the first time, I think, in a while to have 3 receivers with 10-plus receptions. So this offense got back on track last night.
Yeah, you mentioned the 10 receptions by 3 different players. That's only the second team in history to do that. And Rodgers completed a franchise record 39 completions last night. 39 of 56. He threw the ball 56 times.
Yeah, Brett Favre had 36. That was the previous record.
Yes, so Rodgers goes for 326 yards. You mentioned Montgomery as well as Randall Cobb. He had some carries as well, 5 for 21. On the Bears side, I kind of feel bad for Brian Hoyer. He had started the last 4 games, and he had thrown for at least 300 yards in every game. He hadn't made a turnover. And then obviously he's forced to leave with the injury to the arm. The Packers going into this game were without their top 3 cornerbacks, Demarius Randall, Quentin Rollins, and Sam Shields, all because of injury. So it's set up for Hoyer on the offense to have a big night throwing the ball, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah, you look at the Green Bay Packers, and they're a team that, this game was basically told Aaron Rodgers, you do whatever you can for us. We don't have faith in the running game, be it Niall Davis, Ty Montgomery. We don't necessarily assume that they're going to go break out for 100-plus yards. And if you look at the team over the past 4 weeks, you have 4 weeks, you have Jordy Nelson, 100 yards against the Giants. You got against the Cowboys, you had Randall Cobb, you had Ty Montgomery 98 yards against the Cowboys. You've had people, be it Randall Cobb, Montgomery, Jordy Nelson, and this week Adams. You kind of had different guys step up every week for Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't help with consistency necessarily, but it's basically something that Aaron Rodgers always has to be the guy to be relied on. And the one thing the Packers, you can basically tell them is just like, okay, as long as you can get about 100 yards or so rushing combined, doesn't have to be with one guy, but just as long as you have about 100 yards combined with a running game, that's enough for Aaron Rodgers, assuming he's, having an Aaron Rodgers-like game, and against the Chicago Bears defense, which is pretty much the main point of this whole thing. Chicago's been really bad all year. They haven't scored 20 points the entire season. If they keep doing stuff like that, they can actually absolutely beat the bad teams as long as the running game has about 100 yards total.
So I kind of feel bad for Devontae Bosby of the Chicago Bears last night because Devontae Adams absolutely torched him. You mentioned Adams, 13 catches, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, both of them coming against Bosby. He also had 3 penalties on him. Aaron Rodgers identified the rookie out of Pittsburgh State quite early and targeted Devontae Adams really all game, especially in that second half, and they absolutely lit him up and ate him for lunch. So the Bears defense, not really good. What I saw from Rodgers in this offense last night really was from that second half on. After that, the Bears' lone touchdown of the game come from a fumble recovery, which they strip-sacked Rodgers and then returned for a touchdown right there near the goal line. Ever since that moment when the Bears were winning 10-6, the Packers scored 20 consecutive points, and it seemed like that offense really figured it out all of a sudden. What they started doing was they started doing kind of Patriots and Brady-esque, was they would have 4 wide receivers spread out, a running back coming out of the backfield, which was really, most cases, Ty Montgomery or Randall Cobb, which is a wide receiver, and then just quick, short passes. Aaron Rodgers threw 39 passes of 5 yards or fewer, which is the most he's ever done. So everything was quick passes, get the ball out of his hands, get it into these quick receivers to make plays and get yards after the catch. And that's what you saw from Green Bay last night, which is kind of Brady-esque. Do we think the Packers' offense is back on track, or is this a case of they played a really bad defense?
I think it could be a little bit of both, so to speak, because I know they had over 100 yards rushing, 103, but I don't know if that's good enough to beat some of the best teams in the NFC, and let alone the NFL. They still kind of had trouble running the football. I know Montgomery has 60 yards on 9 carries, and they mixed Randall Cobb in there. But remember, Don Jackson, the guy who was supposed to start, quote unquote, even got hurt in this game as well. The practice squad player, who is also Alex's boy. He used to play with him in high school. And
I graduated high school with him too, so I know of him as well. But yeah, he got a hand injury. Reports are that he said he could have gone back into the game, but he had to deal with like a big club and cast on his hand, which would have been kind of hard. So I would imagine with a week and a half to prepare for the next game against the Falcons, he'll probably be active, I would say.
Yeah, I think they're going to get Niall Davis involved more in the next game, but I still think, with the inexperience of Don Jackson, Niall Davis, not with the team, not knowing the playbook, I think they're going to still mix in Montgomery and Randall Cobb in the backfield, until James Starks comes back in, I think, about 3 weeks or so, or more. I'm not sure how many weeks James Starks is going to be gone. But, yeah, that's my only concern with this team is the running game, especially when they go against the big teams. But I think this offense in general, though, it just got back on track. It's like there's a receiver stepping up. Like Devontae Adams, he almost didn't even play yesterday because he was in concussion protocol, and then he just had probably the best game of his career last night.
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think necessarily the Green Bay Packers are back to being the Green Bay Packers because you saw the week before that they lost to the Cowboys, they barely beat the Giants, and they barely beat the Lions. So it's kind of a team that is okay. They're not necessarily great. You beat a bad team. Congratulations, you beat a bad team by a lot of points. Now you have at Atlanta, which maybe Atlanta doesn't have the best home field advantage in the world. They had that thing back where they had the basically pipe-in crowd noise, but you're still playing Atlanta, and basically whatever you want to talk about their defense, their offense is one of the best in the NFL. You got to face Julio Jones, who is his own version of a cheat code, and you have to match them point for point, and we didn't see the offense for Green Bay Packers doing that until the second half. Second half, yeah, they were amazing, 3 touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers. But the first half, I mean, it was a terrible game, 6-3 at the end of it. So I would think that this is a nice confidence boost for the Packers, but I don't think they're necessarily back.
I kind of am on the fence. I don't really know what to say. I kind of compare it to like a jump shooter in basketball. What's the best thing to get them going? Maybe they get a layup. Maybe they get a free throw, see the ball go through the net, get some rhythm going. I think that's what I kind of compare it to with this. We'll have to wait and see. The Bears' defense is so bad. So I guess against Atlanta on the road, we'll get a better indication. I think what you mentioned, Anthony, is kind of the one thing that worries me, especially since I'm a Packer fan. I probably follow the team more than you guys do, no offense, but is that defense, because their top three corners are all injured, they're going up against Julio Jones next week, who, I mean, could have another 300-yard performance against this team
probably
right
going
now.
to get torched. And
so that definitely would worry me.
But I do think the offense is a little bit more back on track, with the passing game. But the running game just worries me.
Definitely.
Still, yeah.
I would imagine even when maybe James Starks gets back, or if they get Niall Davis back up to speed quicker than they would maybe hope for, I would expect maybe Ty Montgomery and Randall Cobb to still make some plays in the backfield, especially as receiving options, because they've been doing really well the last couple of weeks. Montgomery had a career-high 10 catches, 98 yards in a similar role last night against Dallas the week before. So he's having success coming out of the backfield, being sort of that check-down option for Rodgers. So the Packers, as we mentioned, will face the Atlanta Falcons next week. This is going to be the Packers' first road game since week 2. Their first road game since September 18th. They had a stretch of 4 consecutive home games. They had a bye week mixed in there. So the Packers definitely are not sure what the road feels like right about now.
That's a long time.
Exactly. So 4 out of their next 5 games are on the road. The only home game mixed in there is a game against Indianapolis. So I think we'll maybe see what the Packers are made of in these next few weeks, especially with so many road games. They're sitting at 4-2, which is not terrible. Still trying to compete with the Minnesota Vikings there in the NFC North. I'd say the Packers aren't necessarily an elite team anymore. I think they're kind of middle of the road. I think they're, just a wild card team.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't see this team winning this division with the Vikings on top. The way they're playing right now, yeah.
Definitely. So, and the Bears at 1-6, really, their season's over. They need to really address the quarterback position, whether it's Jay Cutler going forward or maybe they get rid of him at the end of the year and draft someone. They definitely need to make a lot of changes there in that offense.
I don't think Jay Cutler is going to be the quarterback for this team next year. I do think Jay Cutler is going to get some time before the season ends, but I just can't see how Jay Cutler is a quarterback for this team next year. I just can't see it.
Yeah, I'm with you guys there. So, with that being said, we'll take our first break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Coming out of the break, we're going to talk about the rest of the NFL games this weekend. Got a lot of great games. We got a game over in London, in England, so we'll preview that and the others right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we are back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, talking about the rest of the NFL games this week. Before the break, we mentioned there is a game over in England that will feature the New York Football Giants against the Los Angeles Rams. That game is Sunday morning, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific on the NFL Network. If you are interested in watching some morning football, or you could watch some football in the Premier League, which I will probably be doing this weekend as well, which this is not the soccer show, so I won't get into it. But so guys, we have a lot of great games this weekend. I guess before the Ben Roethlisberger injury, we would all be talking about the Patriots and Steelers game. But with Roethlisberger missing this game with the torn meniscus, Landry Jones comes in to be the quarterback for the Steelers against New England. Definitely tough matchup. I think the Patriots are probably my lock of the week because of that. Brady's been playing so well in the 2 games he's been back. Steelers going to be affected without Big Ben. I think Antonio Brown goes down. I think Le'Veon Bell goes down. And some of those other receivers as well. So I'll take New England. That's probably my lock.
I wouldn't consider that a lock. Like, I have the Patriots winning this game, but I still think that the Steelers are going to make this competitive. The Steelers are not the type of team to completely change their offense. You know, they're going to use Le'Veon Bell. They're going to use that running game to keep Tom Brady and that offense off the field, you know, to limit those possessions. So I do think they're going to make that competitive, so to speak, if everything goes well. I do see a drop-off in production from Antonio Brown a little bit and everyone else because Big Ben just makes everyone in this offense better. But I still think because they have Le'Veon Bell in that running game, I think it will give them a chance to make this game competitive. But I just can't see them winning this game because they just don't have that they don't have Big Ben, you know, to carry him late in this game if it happens to come to like a game-winning possession or something like that.
Oh, no, the Patriots are going to smash. The Patriots are going to win by 97 points. They're going to destroy the team. Landry Jones is no good. He basically has like one good game, and even that was only 209 yards and a touchdown and 2 interceptions. If Ben Roethlisberger was in the game, it would be one of the best games probably of the year. Without him, you kind of saw the drop-off last year. Antonio Brown, when someone he's comfortable with, like Ben Roethlisberger, fantastic. Outside of that, not the same, which I get it. You have a different quarterback throwing to you. You're not exactly used to it. But I mean, Tom Brady's still on that Deflategate anger. Like, he's on that, like, I want to beat everybody by 50 points every single game. I don't care how I get it. You know, 300-plus yards or 400 yards in the first game and 3 touchdowns for Brady in the first 2 games. You're going against a okay Steelers defense, not like they used to be. Yeah, the Patriots, 14, 21 points. Yeah, just beat down.
I think this is
quite a statement there.
I think this is a huge game for the Steelers defense because remember, this defense got torched by the Miami Dolphins, so they're going to try to come out and put up a good performance. They're going to try to do it, and that's why I think this is a huge game for the Steelers. I don't see them winning the game. I don't see the Patriots winning 97 points. I just can't. Like, it could happen.
Might be a little high.
A little higher.
Maybe a little.
Maybe they'll just win
a little
by
higher.
90.
They'll have the no mercy rule implemented and all that.
I think Pittsburgh would probably get a late touchdown at 97 to make it 90. So maybe
right.
Anything could happen. We've seen stranger things.
That's a little harsh, but okay.
So I think probably the best game of the weekend is definitely going to be our Sunday night matchup. That is a NFC West battle between the Seattle Seahawks, who sit at 4-1, against the Arizona Cardinals at 3-3. I think this is definitely the matchup of the weekend. I think this game really comes down to the running game for Arizona. I think Le'Veon Bell is the best running back in the NFL, but I think David Johnson's probably number 2 right now, and that's saying a lot, only his second year in the league. He's so good. He has a great mix of size, speed, power, good receiving back out of the backfield. He's had 3 touchdowns in each of his last 2 games and over 100 yards. So I think if he can have success against the Seattle running, for Seattle like front 7, that running defense, I think if David Johnson has success, if he goes over 100 yards, I think Arizona wins. And then you have sort of in the other side, the Seahawks are maybe going to be without Cam Chancellor. He's battling an injury. They're in that safety position. He's sort of your enforcer back there, really lays down the boom on some of the receivers and so physical. So if he's not there, you have Carson Palmer in this high passing attack being able to maybe do a little bit more. So I think the game comes down to those 2 things. I think the Cardinals will win a close game because they are at home. I'll give them that edge. This is a big game for them at 3-3. A loss puts them at 3-4. Seattle will be 5-1. Probably really got a grip on that NFC West division. So this is a really big game here in conference and in the division of the NFC West.
Yeah, this is a really huge game for them. If they win this game, Arizona, they'll be over 500, I think, for the first time this season, I believe. Yep. Yeah. And they'll be on the 3-game winning streak. That's huge for this team. This is the team that a lot of people's eyes that were a Super Bowl contender. They don't look that way right now. This team is still have enough talent to be a wild card team or be a playoff team, so to speak. But yeah, this game is going to, feature a lot of David Johnson and Christine Michael. Don't forget about him. He's been a really good running back this year. I think he's probably going to be the running back for the rest of the season, regardless if Thomas Rawls comes back or not. But I think I'm going to take Seattle in this game. I just think they're just the better team, so to speak. Yeah, and in this Cardinals offense just hasn't performed the way I thought they would have. The passing game, that is. But it's going to the running game. I am expecting a huge day from David Johnson. But the fact that the Seattle Seahawks offense has been better this part of the season so far, I have to give the edge to Seattle right now.
You talked about David Johnson being one of the best running backs in the game. Like Ezekiel Elliott would like a word with you.
He's only played.
Yeah, you can't forget about him though.
He's only played 6 career games though.
I get that, but
after last year, you would say Todd Gurley is the best running back in the NFL. Have we seen that?
He was in the top 5 discussion throughout the whole year though.
But what has he done? What has he done for me lately? What has he done for me this year? How much of Ezekiel Elliott is his offensive line?
That's fair. No, that part's
fair. That is fair. But you have to consider Ezekiel Elliott in that conversation too.
I'd say in the next couple of years, Ezekiel Elliott's going to be up there. He's definitely one of the most exciting players we've seen come out. Yeah, I'd say probably the best running back we've seen come out in a few years.
I think he's the best to come out in the first round since I'm going to say Adrian Peterson. Yeah, I don't remember a running back making this big of a splash in his rookie year.
Definitely, and it's still early, so we'll have to see. Maybe he has sort of that rookie slump midway through the year. I don't really think so, but we'll have to see with the Cowboys. They're on a bye week this week, so they're not playing. So we'll have to wait until next week when they play Philadelphia.
Right, and you look at the Cardinals. David Johnson doing really well, but Seattle's rushing defense is third in the league, 74.6 yards per game. Only one, so they give up 100 yards. Carlos Hyde. They are a team that
that was mostly in garbage time too.
That too. So it's one of the teams that they're allowed. They're really good at shutting teams down that way. We've seen Arizona's not exactly the same team they were last year, passing the ball when Carson Palmer was bombing it to John Brown, Michael Floyd, Larry Fitzgerald, everybody else like that. Now I think it's kind of one of those things, a little bit more running-centric, but you're going against a defense who is good, but you also kind of look at Seattle. The people they've played hasn't been necessarily that good. Like I said, not like they've been playing Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott, stuff like that. The whole year they played Todd Gurley, who's kind of regressed, Matt Forte, who since week basically 2 has regressed. They played Arian Foster, who's not the same guy. So the running backs they played haven't exactly been the best, but I think they can shut down the running game enough, get maybe David Johnson to around 80, 85 yards, to under 100 yards. Still a good enough game, but nothing exciting. Seattle, we've seen them basically, even on the road, they beat the Jets, and they lost, by only 6 points to the Rams, so they're not a bad team on the road either, and obviously at home they're one of the best teams in the last probably 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I'm going to go with Jeremiah. I'm going to say Seattle over Arizona.
Okay, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I feel like it's going to be a close game. I don't think either of these teams are going to win by 97. Like Anthony thinks the Patriots
I don't even think that's going to happen, but okay.
Well, of course he's being
I know
he's being sarcastic.
But the game that I am interested in is the Sam Bradford Bowl, Minnesota Vikings versus the Philadelphia Eagles.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Sam Bradford's last 2 teams he's played for, the Vikings coming off a bye week, sit as the lone undefeated team in the National Football League at 5-0. And then the Eagles, who started at 3-0, lost their last couple of games here to Washington and to Detroit. We've seen kind of the Wentz wagon. The wheels are a little falling off. He's kind of
it's on 3 wheels right now.
He's kind of seemed and played like a rookie the last couple of weeks, and now you have him match up against probably, maybe in my eyes, the best defense in the league, if not one of the top 2 or 3, who are coming off of a bye week, so they're very rested against Minnesota. I like Minnesota in this game. I think they're going to win convincingly. I'm not really sold on the Eagles. I wasn't even after their 34-3 victory over Pittsburgh. I don't think this offense has really enough playmakers on the outside. Ryan Matthews at running back is kind of shaky. He's just really waiting for another injury in my eyes. So I think Minnesota wins convincingly. I really like Minnesota. Until I see someone have any success against this defense, I can't go against them.
Yeah, this is my lock of the week right here. Minnesota over Philadelphia Eagles. And you alluded to the not having a lot of weapons on the outside for Wentz. He does have Jordan Matthews, but he's been playing mainly hurt this whole entire year. Zach Ertz is nowhere to be found. I know he was hurt for about 3-4 weeks, but when he came back last week, he only had like 1 catch for 22 yards. And Ryan Matthews hasn't been very consistent. This running game hasn't been consistent. So Carson Wentz has been the lone bright spot for this team. And he is playing like a rookie. We knew he was going to hit the rookie wall at some point. And this is the toughest defense he's probably going to face the entire year. So, yeah, I don't see Wentz coming, just going on fire over the Vikings here.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if they weren't playing the Vikings, let's say if the Philadelphia Eagles were playing the Lions or the Packers or some other team in that division, I would give them a lot better of a chance. Because you look at both of the quarterbacks, Sam Bradford and Carson Wentz only have one interception between the both of them. They're basically playing good enough to win games while not necessarily having to be the reason, because you said that defense in Minnesota, even Philadelphia, you can get a few, yards here and there from Ryan Matthews or Jordan Matthews. But it's one of those things with the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz has kind of not regressed, but just like you can't keep up that whole, rookie hot streak like we saw with Cam Newton his first 2 games, 400 yards passing, and then kind of the NFL kind of realizes, okay, he can do this, but he can't do this, and you kind of rein it back in a little bit. I would go with the Vikings for no other reason than just their defense. Their defense is going to get to Carson Wentz. Their defense is going to get to everybody in Philadelphia. And one thing also with the Eagles to actually look for, the Eagles know Sam Bradford. They had him. They know his tendencies. They know what he's good at. They know what he's not good at more than any other team. Because the one thing with Bradford is as good as he was, he had those injury problems. Philadelphia knows what he's good at and what he likes to go to, so it could be one of those things where they just kind of take away what he's preferred going to. Like maybe they try and take away Stephon Diggs, who's back now, like you said, kind of struggled the last few weeks. Also didn't play one of them, and I could see them making it closer in that stretch. Philadelphia or Minnesota doesn't necessarily have the greatest offense in the world. We saw in week 1 they basically won because of their defense. So I can see it being a closer game, but I would still go with the Vikings just because of their defense.
Okay, guys, let's talk an upset pick. My upset pick is I'm going to take the Redskins on the road against the Detroit Lions. The Redskins, everyone was ready to write them off after an 0-2 start. They lost to Pittsburgh and to Dallas, 2 really good teams. Since then, they've won 4 in a row, so they sit at 4-2. Kirk Cousins is playing a lot better. Detroit's playing good as well. They're at 3-3. Matthew Stafford not making too many mistakes. Marvin Jones has been one of the best free agent signings all year long. He's got 529 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had over 200 yards against Green Bay a few weeks back. I like the Redskins, though. They're playing really well. Kirk Cousins is not making mistakes. Matt Jones, a running back, has sort of solidified that position and made it his own. And he's a good receiver out of the backfield as well. I really like Washington over Detroit.
Yeah, and going back to Kirk Cousins, I feel like people in general are a little too harsh on Kirk Cousins. He's been actually effectively playing well past few weeks. They kind of treat him, so to speak, close to Tony Romo, how the media treats him. They're kind of doing the same thing with Kirk Cousins. Like, they want him to be better, but they don't realize he's just good that way, the way he is. He's just playing the way he is. And he had a great year last year as well. And the Redskins, after going 0-2, I didn't think this team had a chance. I didn't think they win 4 straight games. They've done it pretty well, too. They did it with the running game. They did it with pretty good, solid defense. And they are playing a really good offense in Detroit. So I don't know if I think I'm going to take the Lions in this game. Yeah, just because of the offense has been they're kind of like back on track there. Gordon Tate got more involved last week. He's finally back. He came alive. And then this team doesn't run the ball really well, but they pass the ball really well. And that's why I'm going to give them the edge. And they're at home, so.
I'm going to go with the Lions. I think that they just have a little bit better of an offense, a little bit more stable. Matthew Stafford's been a little bit better throughout the year, being able to adjust to not having Megatron on the team. Okay, my upset of the week. I've been thinking about this. I've been wondering if I should do this. If it's a good idea, if this is a bad idea.
The Browns.
Yeah.
Are you really?
No.
No, 100%. I'm not even kidding. Yes.
Come on, are you serious?
No, here's the thing. Just hear me out.
Okay.
1 second, really quick. Okay. Cleveland's terrible. We all know they're terrible. That's fine. They're not going 0-16. They're not. The Lions did that back in, I think it was, 2007? Yeah, I think they went in 2007, 2008.
Megatron was on that team, too. Remember that?
Yes, he was very
That was the year after that they drafted Stafford with the number 1 pick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We talk about how bad the Browns are. The Bengals aren't great either. They're 2-4. They have been struggling the entire year. They beat the Jets by 1 point in week 1. They beat the Dolphins by 15 points. Okay, that's a nice win for them. You lost 4 other games. I understand the teams they lost to are good teams, the Cowboys, Patriots, Broncos, Steelers. That's fine. Also, in the games they've lost, they have looked terrible. The highest they've scored in those 4 weeks they've lost is 17 as to the Broncos and Patriots. They don't score a lot of points either. It's basically just A.J. Green getting, deep passes from Andy Dalton, just like Hail Marys, please God save me. The Browns, I like Pryor. Corwell's okay. Kessler's been solid enough.
He looks really good.
He's been surprisingly well.
He's been good. I think they need to keep Kessler there in Cleveland. I think they can build around him. They got Terrell Pryor there. I think you say no.
You went too far with that. No, I'm saying one game. Don't do that.
I like
Don't
Kessler. He's looked really well. I think they can see what they have for next year if they happen to not go for a quarterback so early. Because Cleveland's probably going to draft a quarterback.
Yes.
But I don't know if they would do it in the first round. We don't know yet. But I can't go for the Browns because the Bengals, they might have Tyler Eifert back. He's been a huge part of their offense. Last season led the tight ends and touchdowns with 13, so he might come back. He said he's been feeling really well. With Tyler Eifert is on this team, and then they're like a completely different team in the red zone, and that is big. We've seen how Cincinnati looks in the red zone this year, especially in that Miami game a couple weeks ago. They only scored one touchdown, but they won 22-7. They could have won like 47-7 if they would have had more red zone targets. So I think that is going to bode well for the Cincinnati Bengals. But the Browns have been really competitive in their games this year. Surprisingly, they haven't looked as bad as the Niners have. The Niners have not been competitive in any of their games. So I do think it will be a competitive game, but I can't give this give this game to the Browns.
That's fine.
But I do see your reasoning for it.
Yeah. And you talk about they've been in the games. They only lost by 2 to the Titans. They lost by 6 to the Dolphins. They lost by 5 to the Ravens. So they've been close in a lot of these games. They could have beaten Miami in Week 3. They just couldn't make any field goals.
They could have easily been 3-3 right now.
So,
if anybody knows Andy Dalton, it's Cleveland Browns head coach Hugh Jackson. He was his offensive coordinator the last couple of years. So if anybody knows Andy Dalton better than Hugh Jackson, please step forward because I don't think anybody does. And also, the city of Cleveland is riding high right now. I realize this is a road game, but the Indians are going to host Game 1 of the World Series on Tuesday for the first time ever.
In a long time.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are going to be raising the banner at Quicken Loans Arena for their first championship. So the city of Cleveland is riding high right now. With all that being said, I just can't bet.
That's fine.
I just can't bet with the Browns.
That's fine.
I took the Browns in Week 1 over the Eagles.
Yes.
And they absolutely let me down.
I didn't go well.
So
you would never do that again.
I made a pact that I would
never do that again.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure one of the first things I said was like, "Why did you pick the Browns? Never pick the Browns," and I just picked the Browns. But yeah, I'm doing it. That's fine. Just one game. I'm not saying the whole year. Just one game.
So I will never do that again.
That's fine.
And I do think the Bengals are a lot better than their 2-4 record. They've lost to 4 really good teams.
They've been playing a lot of tough teams. They had tough schedules to open the year.
They've lost to 4 really good teams. So I'll take the Bengals. But the Browns are playing competitive. Hugh Jackson really knows Andy Dalton, that offense. The city of Cleveland is riding high. Who knows? Maybe this is the 1 week the Browns step up and get something done. But
everybody gets one.
We'll have to wait and see. The Browns are definitely going to win a game. So
They do. I just don't know when it's going to happen. It's probably going to come at us as a surprise.
It'll happen when we least expect it, just like this game right here. Who knows?
That's just Cleveland for it. They do it when they least expect it.
I'll tell you what, if the Browns do win this week, Anthony, you are going to be like literally the man on next week's show. So
yes.
We'll have to wait and see. As always, on Monday, we will update you on these NFL results out of the weekend, as well as preview the Monday Night Football matchup, which is featuring the Texans against the Broncos. Brock Osweiler returning to Denver for the first time since he kind of turned the other way and left them in free agency this year.
Yes, the Brock Osweiler Bowl.
So
on Monday. Alex and I will talk about that.
A couple of previews of quarterbacks with their last 2 teams, as we mentioned, Minnesota and Philadelphia, and then Houston and Denver. So we'll take our last break here at the GSMC Football Podcast. Coming out of the break, we're going to talk about this weekend slate of college football games, as well as a couple of the results last night. We had a wacky play in the BYU-Boise State game, which I know Anthony had talked about on the sports show, but we just did not understand it all, and it might have been the worst fake punt in history.
I did see that, and that's terrible.
So we will talk about that and more college football right after the break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. And now we're going to get into some college football action. And Ben is kind of feeling himself over here.
Yeah. Do. All right, never mind. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and so we had a couple of we kind of had a wacky game yesterday in Boise. But before that, I wanted to mention Virginia Tech just absolutely smoked Miami 37-16 after I picked Miami to win that game.
You and I both.
It seems like a long time ago Miami was ranked 10th in the nation
That seemed like
4-0 because at one point they were, and now they sit at 4-3.
Yeah, they lost 3 straight games, and this team has not looked good against like tougher competition. As I thought this was going to be a more competitive game, but maybe Miami is just not as good as we thought they were.
Definitely not. And then we had number 14 Boise State win over BYU 28-27. This is a game where Boise State was actually trailing in the fourth quarter, had to come from behind and win, so they remain undefeated and they will obviously remain ranked. But the play and talking point of the game in this game was BYU's absolutely terrible fake punt they ran in the second quarter. So BYU at the time were trailing 14-10 to Boise State. This was right in the middle of the second quarter. It's 4th and 19 from their own 5-yard line. And they decide to run a fake punt with their punter sort of like a stretch play going around the left side, having to obviously pick up 19 yards, but he's obviously in punting formation, so he has to run about 25, 26, 27 yards to try and get a first down. Luckily, he gets out of the end zone, so they avoid a safety, but he gets tackled right at the 2-yard line. He gets absolutely swarmed by like 6 or 7 Broncos. This was just the absolute worst play I've ever seen. So BYU coach Kalani Sitake said that, it was something on film we thought we wanted to be aggressive, and we came out and just didn't work out. Well, obviously, this was absolutely terrible. Like,
I love that so much. There's a couple of plays that like you could talk about that was a great one-handed kid, such a play of the season. No. Those plays are great. That's nice. That's fantastic. No. These are my favorite plays ever, just because it's one of those things like you talked about. The coach thought it was a good idea. Why? Who talked to you? Who is the guy? Like, who's the offensive coordinator that was like, Coach, look, here's the thing. I understand that we're not, playing the best of our abilities right now. I got this play. Okay, what's this play? Okay, we're going to do a fake punt. Wait. Okay, hold on. We're going to do a fake punt on our own side of the 50. Wait. Okay, no. We're going to do our own fake punt on our own side about the 5-yard line. Okay, why do you do it? No. It's going to be work. We're going to run the ball out of the end zone. Yes, out of the end zone. It's going to be great. Why don't you throw the ball? No. And it was just – it's not as bad as a Colts play where they had that fake punt, whatever you want to call that, where it was just basically 2 guys and they just basically had to deal with the entire defense.
His center and I think it was Griff Whalen.
Yeah,
with literally nobody blocking.
I was literally going to ask you guys what play was worse.
The Colts is worse because it's 2 guys by themselves that are just like, oh, God, we have to do this all by ourselves.
They have the whole defense facing them.
I think that play was worse. But I think this decision was probably worse because in that game they were trailing late in, I think it was like the third quarter at the time.
It was the second quarter, I think, yeah.
Okay, and they were not playing well. In this game, it was a competitive game, and they're on their own goal line. They're on their own 5-yard line.
On the road.
With the Colts, they were in, midfield. It's not like they were with their backs against the wall like this. So they're on their own 5-yard line. This is a worse decision, but that play for the Colts versus Patriots game was just a worse play because I don't know what they were drawing up, but this decision was absolutely worse.
I want an interview with the punter to be like, okay, when you got the ball and you ran like 3 yards, like how scared were you when you basically saw everybody, they didn't like think it was like something that was going to work. They were just like, oh, really? We get to hit him now? Like, because when the punter, like, you're not really supposed to hit him. You're supposed to basically try and hit the ball. once they saw him basically like move a little bit to the left, it's like, oh, we get to hit him. Oh, okay. And everyone's just like, yeah, let's do this. Like,
so the punter is Johnny Linehan.
Okay.
So, but I can understand if he's
get him
maybe
on the phone.
I can understand if he maybe has the size of the kicker from Penn State, because that guy absolutely lays the boom on people on kickoff returns. But this guy is not even nearly what that guy is. But this is just an absolutely terrible decision. And I guess it was kind of a big play in that game because it led to a touchdown for the Broncos, and they ended up winning the game by 1. So kind of a bonehead decision for BYU. But Boise State does remain undefeated.
Yes.
And now let's look at some of these games here in the weekend of college football. Definitely the big one everyone has their eyes on is number 6, Texas A&M, going on the road to Tuscaloosa to face the number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. And Trevor Knight, if you guys remember, he was the quarterback of the Oklahoma Sooners in their victory over Alabama in 2014. Knight in that game had 4 touchdown passes, threw for 348 yards, and really spearheaded that attack for Oklahoma before transferring now to Texas A&M in that victory over Alabama. I realize this is a different team. We're a couple of years later, and the spread in this game is 19, which I think is kind of high. But I do like Alabama in this game. It's hard to ever bet against them. I think the difference, or what Texas A&M needs to do, is they need to be effective running the ball. Trevor Knight's a guy who can move around. They have Travion Williams. The sort of Achilles heel for Alabama has been these running quarterbacks. Ole Miss, prior to this year, beating them the last couple of years, spread offense. Deshaun Watson absolutely lit them up in the national title game last year. We saw what Johnny Manziel did with Texas A&M way back. So that's been the one Achilles heel for Alabama, is these styles of offenses that Texas A&M runs.
Yeah, and I have to go with Alabama here too as well. I can't bet against the Tide at home. I just can't see it. But this is going to be probably the game of the week, most by far. You got a top 10 matchup here. The Aggies, they literally came out of nowhere. They didn't begin the year ranked. They did start off the season beating a ranked UCLA team, a team that we thought, well, at least I did, that was going to be good in the Pac-12. They're not even the best team in that division in the Pac-12. But Trevor Knight has had a really good year for the Aggies, even in that win against the Tennessee Volunteers, a game that I thought they were going to lose because you know how Tennessee is in those kind of games. They show they're very resilient in that game, and I do think that really makes a really good team when you can stay resilient in games like that. But you can't do that against Crimson Tide. You can make it close and competitive, but it's going to be hard to beat the Tide at home. You got to play your best game to beat the Tide, and I don't know if Trevor Knight can do that.
So you look at, whether it's Trevor Knight or Williams, both of them, they have over 1,200 yards rushing as a tandem there, and you talked about how the running quarterback basically can not necessarily always beat Alabama, but at least give them enough problems when they're basically breaking contain and able to kind of move around and make broken plays. 19 points does seem kind of high. 19 points kind of seems like something that, I understand because Alabama's Alabama, but, you look at how good Texas A&M is, a top 10 team in the nation. I think it'll be a close game. They give it like a 14-point, maybe 17, but I think 19's too high.
I agree. I think 19's pushing it a little too much.
That's way too high. They're kind of underrating Texas A&M here.
But this is what we've seen with Alabama, with the exception of really that Ole Miss game. They're one of those teams that really just wear you down, and it's like, oh, they're only losing by 14. That's not too bad. And then you turn the other channel, and then all of a sudden it's 20. Then it's maybe 27 because they just kind of wear you down. They get really physical, start running the ball. If Texas A&M can have success, it's what we already talked about on the offense. They have to be able to run the ball. But then on defense, they have Myles Garrett, who is going to be a top draft pick in the NFL next year, a good pass rusher. Maybe he can get to Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts, who's a guy who likes to run as well. So maybe if he can get to him, force him out of the pocket, maybe make some mistakes, then A&M can keep it close. I think 19 is probably too much. I think Bama wins by, you said 14. I think that sounds about right. Maybe like 13. Because this is a big game for Texas A&M, because even if they lose, maybe they only have one loss at the end of the year. They can, maybe if other teams ahead of them drop, like if Washington kind of struggles, if the Big 12, they don't have a conference championship game, so maybe if a team like West Virginia or Baylor lose a game or two, maybe A&M can kind of slide in as not being a conference champion into that college football playoff. So if they have a good loss, maybe by like a field goal, maybe like a late touchdown or something like that, then they might have a chance of being there at the end. So this is a big game for A&M, so they obviously are going to be playing their hardest and playing their best. So it's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, and these teams are really similar in points per game and points allowed per game as well. Texas A&M, they're averaging 40.2, Alabama 45.4. So I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I do think these defenses are going to play well against each other, but I just wanted to point that out there. And also, both of these teams have averaged over 500 yards of offense as well. So that's something to look forward to in this matchup.
Okay, so another matchup here, actually in the SEC, which features ranked opponents, is number 17 Arkansas going on the road to face number 21 Auburn. Arkansas with their victory last week over Ole Miss, something that surprised all of us. But Arkansas really a solid team, sitting at 5-2. Brett Bielema has had a lot of success, even going back to last year with the Razorbacks, quite earlier than I think a lot of us thought he would. But he's doing a lot of that Wisconsin-esque things, playing good, solid defense, running the ball. I'm actually going to take Arkansas on the road over Auburn this week.
Okay. And when I'm looking at this game here, not Alabama, Auburn, they kind of came out of nowhere, so to speak, in this top 25 rankings. And, I'm looking at the teams that these two have faced. They have beaten LSU when they were ranked at a time. That was actually Les Miles' last game, matter of fact. And then they actually did lose to Texas A&M. They lost, I think, by 13 points by 2 scores. So they were in that game. But Arkansas has been the clear-cut better team this season, especially on offense. But Auburn has been a little bit better on defense as well. So I kind of like this matchup. You having a really good defense versus a very good offense. And I think this is kind of really an underrated matchup, so to speak. I feel like no one's really talking about this matchup. It is a SEC matchup. But I am going to go with you, Ben. I think I'm going to take the Razorbacks because they just have a better offense.
Baby. Hog suey.
They just have a better offense.
So you look at Arkansas and you look at Bielema. Bielema's been slowly getting better every year. He's been at Arkansas, went from 3-9, 7-6, 8-5. Now he's 5-2, slowly getting a little bit better with his team every single year. You look at the Razorbacks; they are in a brutal stretch right now. Over these, they're in the third game of a 5-week stretch where they play Alabama, number 1 team in the nation, Ole Miss at the time, number 12 in the nation, Auburn right now 21. Florida next week at 15, and right now LSU is 25th in the nation. So they got a brutal stretch going right now. Yes, they lost to Alabama, but there's really no shame in that. They lost to Texas A&M. Again, no real shame in that. They're both really, really good teams. Against Auburn, you look at this matchup, I think it'll be Arkansas. I think they have just enough to win the game. I don't really trust Auburn that much. You said their defense is better, but it's still nothing that I would necessarily say is like an Alabama kind of style like that. I would go with Arkansas. Not by a lot, 10 points, something like that. But, yeah, I would go with Arkansas.
Okay, we have some other great matchups here. A couple of games I have my eyes on is TCU going on the road to face number 12 West Virginia. We haven't really seen much out of West Virginia, although they are undefeated. I think TCU is a tough opponent, so we'll see really what the Mountaineers are made of in the Big 12 as they try and compete for that Big 12 title. Really with Baylor right now, it seems like those two are the clear-cut favorites. And then I think number 10, Wisconsin, going on the road to face Iowa could be a very interesting game as well. I think both these teams are really similar, play like similar styles, good defense, want to run the ball. C.J. Beathard is a good quarterback for Iowa. He's probably going to be drafted in the draft next year. So I think that could be kind of a game for Wisconsin, who we've seen the last couple of weeks that they are actually a legit team. We're kind of questioning them, but then they only lost 14-7 to Michigan. And then they forced Ohio State into overtime last week, although they did lose by a touchdown as well. So Wisconsin are legit, but Iowa is still a solid team, returning a lot of guys last year, which they were really just a game away from getting into that college football playoff.
Yeah, and like you said, that Wisconsin team is for real. I didn't think they were going to make it that close against Ohio State, but that defense really impressed me that night. It really did. A matchup I'm really interested in is in the ACC. It's NC State going on the road at Louisville. And NC State, they've been really good the past 2 weeks. They did beat Notre Dame 10-3 in a rainy, stormy,
in that swamp
muddy field.
Because of Hurricane Matthew, that swampland there, that would be so fun to play in as a player. Like after the game, they were all sliding around in. Yeah, that'd be so much fun.
And then last week they played really well against Clemson and Deshaun Watson. I thought Clemson was on the way to lose that game. Clemson just did not look like they looked like the Clemson team that played against Troy and in the beginning. So this is a really tough NC State team. They play really tough defense. I'm really interested to see how they're going to play against Lamar Jackson this Saturday morning. I'm really interested to see it, and then Louisville, they did kind of struggle last week against Duke. They only won by 10 points at home. So this is a real intriguing matchup for me.
Yeah, so you kind of, I'm kind of with you a little bit with the NC State Clemson matchup because you basically have two of the best quarterbacks you're going back-to-back against. Deshaun Watson basically 378 yards, a couple touchdowns and an interception. He had a really good game throwing the ball. They barely, like you said, beat NC State, but, win's still a win. And now you're going up against, in Louisville, Jackson, who is probably the most dynamic quarterback, rushing, passing in college football. I would go with Louisville because they kind of need to get back to being the Louisville that we knew because they kind of fell off a little bit. They got the loss. Now they're probably not going to be in the national championship playoff, stuff like that, because usually, if you're outside of the big major conferences, be it SEC, Pac-12, stuff like that, if you lose a game, you're not going to be back in there. But with all that said, they are at home. Louisville, the one loss they had was to Clemson, which you can understand, but I still think they basically just need to get as many good wins. They need to get those blowout wins. They need to get those wins to kind of look good if they have any chance of making it back into the playoffs.
Like they did in the beginning. And right. I'm not going to pick NC State to win this game. I just feel like they're going to make it competitive.
Yeah, I think they will too.
Yeah. But Louisville, I have them winning this game. They have to win to keep pace in the AP poll.
I think Louisville really struggled last week against Duke, as you mentioned, and Lamar Jackson in particular really struggled throwing the ball. His accuracy was just all over the place. And I think that's sort of been the one thing I think a lot of people have been questioning going forward is can he be an accurate passer? We see what he can do running the ball, his mobility, and all that's great. But he's just a small guy. He's such a little guy. He's going to take a beating if he keeps getting hit so much.
Yeah.
He struggled a lot last week. NC State have been kind of that surprise team a little bit with some of their results lately. But Louisville are at home. I don't think Lamar Jackson can possibly play as bad as he did last week. So I think Louisville will actually win convincingly because I think they kind of have to if they want to try and keep pace, because I kind of throw them in that same mold with Texas A&M, that Louisville can be maybe that one team that might be able to squeak in to the college football playoff if other teams struggle, because they have a good loss. They lost only by a few points against Clemson on the road in the game where they were trailing by so much and then came back and actually had the lead in that game. So they have a good loss. It's not like they got absolutely killed by Clemson. So if other teams falter ahead of them and they keep winning games, they could be that one team, even with one loss that's not a conference champion, that could squeak in there. So they still have a lot to prove and play for. A big game coming up against Houston in a couple of weeks. So I think Lamar Jackson kind of gets back on track against NC State and wins convincingly. But we'll have to wait and see on Monday as we recap the college football weekend and update you on the new Top 25 poll.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard for me to see Louisville squeak in because of the Washington Huskies. They have a fairly easy schedule coming up. And, Texas A&M, they're in the SEC. Even if they have a good loss, I just don't see Louisville surpassing both of those teams. But are we sure we don't want to talk about that Western Michigan and Eastern Michigan game, guys?
We have a battle of Michigan. No, Eastern Michigan actually not too bad at 5-2 overall, 2-1 in the MAC. I'll take Western Michigan. I don't know anything about either of these teams, but the spread is 22. The spread is 22.5.
Way to be honest, Ben.
The spread is 22.5, and Vegas gets paid to get these games right, even though we obviously pick upsets and upsets happen. So I'll take Western Michigan. They are at home as well, so I'll take Western Michigan.
That's a wild card pick of the week. Western Michigan over Eastern Michigan in a blowout.
Oh, I never said a blowout.
They're in a blowout. Western Michigan's been blowing out teams they've been blowing them out of the water lately. So yeah.
Yeah, I know literally nothing about Western Michigan.
Good way to be honest, Ben.
Hey, honesty is the key. So maybe we'll see Western Michigan lose on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see. But we'll update you on Monday as well with the other results in college football on Monday with the show with Jeremiah and Alex, who's not here today. But With that being said, guys, I think this is going to conclude our episode today. Had a great show. Talked a lot of football, which is always great. Leading you into the weekend of NFL and college games is always a great thing. And then recapping some of the games we had last night. So they feel like we had a great episode, though. Episode 100.
100. I think this is the best we ever done, and I don't know if it's going to get any better from here on out. I'm kidding.
Talking about Western Michigan, it has to be good.
It has to be good, yeah.
All right, so guys, I'm Ben.
I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And we will be back on Monday to talk some more football, to preview Monday Night Football, and to recap some of these games in college and in the National Football League. So with that being said, guys, hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you again on Monday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.